I think they just have too much for it to be a full reset. Like, you would just have to be so intentional. You'd have to be Danny Ainge with the Jazz to just dismantle this team. And even then, Danny Ainge ended up with too much stuff to be bad. So it's just too hard to do that. And I think there's no real need to. Would it be nice to get another high draft pick? Yeah, but that's my question for you is, and I have some Fred VanVleet trades, but do you think Scottie Barnes is good enough to be treated as the franchise cornerstone that you're resetting your team around?
Year one, I would have said yes. I don't think he should have won Rookie of the Year, but he was up there with Cade and with Mobley for Rookie of the Year. Last year, I think he took a little bit of a step back. He wasn't as efficient as a field goal shooter. His threes, which weren't good in year one, dipped below 30%. 2-point percentage dropped from 54 to 50%. Some of that could have just been Toronto stuff. His assists did go up, so it's not like it was a full loss, but I didn't think he was the same. I think he kind of had either took a step back or just kind of stayed the same.
Yeah.
Plateaued. I don't know if he's going to be your A-plus one guy on your best team. Do I think he could be kind of an interesting piece of a great team? Yeah, I do. But do I think he's... I'd be looking at him as your 2 to your 1, I think, if you're in an optimal situation. I don't think scoring-wise it feels like he might have the chops to do some of that. And the mechanism is kind of an interesting lack of that. And if he's his size and is the Swiss Army knife, can play the 5, do all this stuff, there's a ton that I think you should love. But I think some of the scoring stuff at his size gets a little bit trickier. And if the 3-point shot doesn't come, it's not like you can just be oh, he's 7 foot, we can play him at the Exactly. It gets a little trickier unless you have the shooting component with him.
If you're not a center in the NBA and you're not early career LeBron James level of driving finisher type, and even that, I'm not sure what that looks like in the modern NBA. You're just limited. So I agree with you. I don't think that they should be thinking about him that way. So I guess that could be a thing to advocate for getting bad again, at least for 1 year. But with VanVleet, I think I agree. I just don't think that he's not even really that big of a floor raiser, in my opinion. I mean, he can shoot. That's helpful. He's a pretty good point of attack defender. He can handle the ball capably. He knows the organization and everything else. But I don't even think that he's somebody that keeps you solid. I think he's just sort of a luxury. And on a good team, he could be more than that. So I have 2 trades.
Hit me.
First of all, I think the Jalen Brunson range for the contract is probably reasonable. 4 years, $104 million.
Yeah.
Something around there. I mean, maybe a little less, but that's probably what he'd be asking for. So this is the first one is one we talked about back at the deadline, if you remember, to the Orlando Magic for Gary Harris, Jalen Suggs, and the 11th pick. Is that too much? Suggs and a top lottery pick?
I think that's too much because it's a sign and trade. So if you did Suggs and a future protected first, I would do it.
They have
Orlando has just a lot of picks.
Yeah, and look, this is minutia, but Gary Harris is somebody that a lot of contenders should be trying to get. So Toronto could potentially flip him. All right, and then the other one I had for VanVleet is 2 Phoenix with Otto Porter and a protected first for DeAndre Ayton. So in this case, they're stacking stuff up to get to a bigger deal to get Ayton. The crazy thing about this whole Toronto offseason, which we can probably just hit now because it relates to this, is why on God's green earth did they trade for Jakob Poeltl at the deadline?
So
a first-round pick.
I don't understand this in retrospect. And he's reportedly looking for $20 million. I think that's crazy for what he is. I think he's a fine center, but I think we live in this league where I would not be paying a guy what he is to make $20 million. I wouldn't. I don't think he's a $20 million a year guy.
Nobody that's Jared Allen, as good as him makes $20 million.
Jared Allen is better than him, and even someone like him at $20 million at times feels like you could are you spending? Would you be better spending that money elsewhere? And Jared Allen, despite the playoff stuff, is a highly competent center with some pretty good skills, but he's not overwhelming elite at one thing. Poeltl is a mid-level exception like type of guy that I would use on my center. I get that they like him. I get they wanted size. Maybe this was like a Nick Nurse thing behind the scenes. Like I don't fully know. Maybe like he really just like I need a big, and I get wanting some stability at that position. But they overpaid. Like you could have just got him in free agency, and your last season would have changed him. Maybe your draft position would be slightly better.
Old-fashioned contract. I mean, they don't have cap space, so I guess that would be the one thing. They wouldn't have been able to go get him in free agency necessarily, but sign and trades, there's all sorts of things you could do. It just felt really old-fashioned, the types of trades we used to see, a first-round pick for an expiring player to go help you kind of make like a push for the 5 seed and whatnot like that. That's like the NBA in like the mid-2000s. Like that just stuff doesn't happen. I think teams are smarter than that, and they in this case they weren't. So the Ayton thing is related to this, but what's your walkaway number for Pirtle? So I had Valanciunas makes 13, or I think Steven Adams makes 13. Valanciunas makes 16, and Yusuf Nurkic makes 18 million. Yusuf Nurkic contract is one of the worst in basketball, so I don't know if that's a good comparison, but they're similar players.
It's. I would rather have Steven Adams than Jakob Pirtle, so 13.
Okay, yeah. So basically the mid-level, like you said.
Yeah,
I just don't know who else is giving. What other cap space team is giving Pirtle money? That's the other thing.
Maybe the Pistons because they just love centers. Maybe Troy Weaver's like another center.
Great. We'll give Mason Plumlee another contract, and we'll bring back Pirtle too. Yeah.
Yeah, and they have Marvin Bagley.
Yeah, making $13 million also.
Yeah. So like, I bet to answer your question, like I think like a good team should like that has their mid level should be like call him and offer it to him. But that's about as high as I think he's reasonably going to get. I don't think there's like cap space teams like really calling out for him.
So
and like that's okay.
Yeah.
But it's just for hit like he wasn't going to get $20 million. Like that just wasn't going to happen.
Players like him, he wasn't even like playing 30 minutes a game for the Spurs. You know, that he's not a high minutes player. He can't shoot free throws. He doesn't do much on offense. It's just not really going to happen. So yeah, all right, let's say that they cap it at 13. That's still a manageable number where I suppose he's tradable. You could keep him as a backup maybe. I don't really know. But do you like the deal for the Suns or the Suns deal for the Raptors to get
Why
Ayton?
are they trading? Why would you trade for DeAndre Ayton and pay him that much money is like my other question. I've
been linked to him in the past, and I think he's a little bit more. He fits a little bit more of their overall roster construction and playing style better than any of the other centers, including Pirtle, who they've had. That would be the case for it.
Yeah, it's just I'm a little.
And you could lose Van Vliet for nothing otherwise. So it's like
that's true.
That's true.
I am just a Ayton skeptic, and being on the hook for his contract with where you're at feels a little dicey to me. Is what I would say. I think if you're sure that you could rejuvenate Ayton, then sure. But I think otherwise, I'm a little like, why did we do this? Even if it's just like I would rather just lose him for nothing than take on a contract that is that huge. Unless you're really, really sure and believe in him.
Is there another Van Vliet deal you like, or team?
No,
least?
the Orlando one is the one that makes the most sense to me.
Okay, we have more trades to get to, so let's go to Pascal Siakam.
So here's the Siakam thing for me, Brendon. Is one of my big mysteries. It did not make my... So on Thursday, or Friday, depending when the episode was out, we're going to have 10 people that are going to decide the NBA offseason. Could be GMs, could be team owners, could be players. Siakam did not make my list for this, but he was on my long list. Mm-hmm. Here's why. Siakam is someone that I could see a world where it makes sense for Toronto to trade him. I could see a world where they decide, hey, you've been great for us, but you're 29, you're in the last year of your contract, time to go. I also think it seems like, if you read it, they're not trying to do a full teardown. He would be the one. He's the best player. He's a top, 15 to 20 player. He's also going to command a ton of money on his next deal. If you're saying we don't want to take a massive back, we want to be ready to go in a year, then you just re-sign him and you don't think about it. But he is the one where it's like if you wanted to get real value back in a trade, because he has the 1 year left, the team could have to re-sign him, get his bird rights. Like that's the one where I think you could extrapolate a lot of value out to retool for yourself. in a way that like an OG Anunoby trade would not. And I wonder if they consider that at all. They've postured no, but I wonder if that is somewhere in the ether out there a little bit.
So I guess one of the other cases to keep him would be he was maybe the guy more than anyone else who didn't seem to get along with Nick Nurse. So there's a little bit of like, well, let's maybe see one season of those guys apart. I don't know if I think that's enough of a reason to keep him, but that's there. To me, the biggest reason to trade him is I think he's the guy on this roster, maybe more than anyone, who overlaps with Scottie too much.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like what you want Barnes to be is somewhat of a version of what Siakam already is. I know they're not the same exact player, but they would occupy similar spots on the court, elbow playmaking, high post stuff, operating as the roller in a pick and roll with whatever guards you end up having this year. And so you kind of want Scottie to slide into that. I don't think that them on the court together is great. I looked it up around the deadline, and they were a negative on the court together, I think, at that time. So I think I would agree with you that they should trade him. I have 3 trades. All the rest of the trades for the whole episode are pretty much in the West. I don't know why. It just is how it played out. All right, to the Mavericks. This is my favorite one. I've been wanting them to do this since the deadline. To Dallas for Bertans, Kleba, Josh Green, and Jaden Hardy, and a 2029 top 4 protected first. So that's like a smaller version of the Donovan trade because he only has 1 year left.
Would you maybe? I know how the salad would work, but I would almost want to be like, could I give up 1 more first and keep Josh Green?
Yeah, that would probably be part of the negotiation.
That's where I would. But I like that destination for him quite a bit.
I just think he's a really nice kind of pick and pop guy with Luka and Kyrie.
And could like make Luka diversify in a way that he probably needs to.
And he can play with another big. Siakam can play with another big because he can space and he can play make. So you could still reinforce the defense a little bit and still have Siakam on the court. He doesn't have to play center. To Portland for Simons, Nurkic, and the 3rd pick, Scoot, basically.
I would do that if I'm them, just because I think Scoot would fill the Van Vliet hole and really turbocharge kind of some of the ball handling stuff there. I wouldn't hate that if I'm them.
Do you think and we'll talk about the Blazers more next week, but do you think the Blazers can do better than Siakam with that? That's their package. There's really no other like varieties involved. They don't have a lot to deal. I think that's what's kind of getting lost with Portland. So Can they do better than Siakam with that package?
Do you think Mikal Bridges is better than Siakam?
I would probably call them somewhat equivalent right now. I think Siakam's like a couple years older, and Bridges is on a much better contract. So I think like trade value-wise, Bridges probably has a little bit higher trade value. But in terms of like what's going to make Dame feel like they can win a championship, I mean, he's pals with Mikal, so that affects it. But I don't... Maybe it makes Dame happy. I do not think Mikal Bridges is ready to be the number 2 on a championship team, in my informed opinion.
Yeah, someone who knows him better than anyone I know personally. You're probably right. Yeah, I would tend to agree. Siakam would like also just there's a defensive part of Siakam, and I think in the right situation maybe gets unlocked in a different way again. That kind of would be a throwback to how he really came on the scene. That I think would be kind of interesting to see if he could tap into a version of that again if he had to do less on offense in a different kind of structure on offense as well.
All right, so last one for Siakam. To the Warriors for Jordan Poole, Gary Payton, and a 2027 top 4 protected first. So this is if Draymond leaves or if they do a separate trade involving Draymond, because Siakam and Draymond are similar players.
Yeah.
So that would be kind of like he's our younger Draymond replacement for the future type of trade.
I would say no to that if I'm Toronto, because I don't really want to be in the Jordan Poole business. If I'm them, Brendon, I'm being very picky about who I'm being very picky this summer. Not too picky, but I think they should be particular about the kind of business they do. I think they're in a spot where what they do this summer is going to kind of have a very direct impact over what the next 24 months looks like. And I think they have to kind of keep some of that in mind when they're doing some of these trades. Even if they get assets back, I think they got to be very, very particular here.
I also think Golden State has to give up more than what I put in there. That's a way smaller package than the other ones, as I'm saying it. So probably 2 picks. And yeah, I agree. I don't love that one. I've always kind of liked it just because, again, Siakam and Draymond are similar. So I just like the idea of kind of him filling that big playmaker role. But it's probably not worth blowing up your team for Pascal Siakam. So getting rid of Poole and Draymond and all this other stuff just to get him in the door is probably not really necessary. Which one did you like the best?
Dallas one.
Me too. I really like that. I think it would be worth, like I said a minute ago when we were talking about finals teams, I think that Siakam as a third guy on that particular team would be worth having him be sort of your all-in move. Like if they make that trade, they really have nothing else to deal. You have Kyrie, Luka, and Siakam, and then some veteran role players, not even like young role players. You still have the number 10 pick this year to get somebody, but that's kind of your team. I think it's worth it, though. I think they fit well enough.
The other part of this, Brendon, is I think if you could get the third pick, I would also want to do that just because I think someone like Scoot, or if Brandon Miller's there, or whatever, maybe they go way off the board and take a Thompson twin or whatever. Maybe they do something weird in that spot. Who knows? The Raptors can be.
Yeah.
He might. If you look at this roster, this is a roster that I think needs an injection of youth alongside Scottie. OG is going to be 26. Mm-hmm. Scottie is going to be 20. He's 21 right now. Okay, Precious is extension eligible. I don't know if I love him as super amount, but you could extend him at a decent number, and I would be like, sure, that's fine. But he's 23. You have guys that are kind of in that range, but then you have Boucher is 30. Malachi Flynn's already 25.
I don't understand how Chris Boucher is 30. It doesn't make any sense. I feel like I learned his name 2 years ago.
Right, it's bizarre. You might lose Gary Trent this summer as well. He's 24. Why Joe Wise I don't think he's a big part of your future plans. I don't think Banton was good last year, but he's 23 already. You need, I think, a real injection of youth to kind of give yourself to get someone more in Scottie's age bracket. And that you also just feel good about. Maybe Koloko kind of develops. He's 22. I know there was some hope for him last year, but maybe he looks better this year. Upcoming season, I think if you could get in a position to take a swing on someone at the top of the draft, I think it would do them a lot of good to get another pick in that range. The Scottie pick was a blessing for that franchise to get in that spot and be able to draft someone like Scottie that they otherwise would not have been able to get with where they're at.
Especially having lived in Tampa, Florida for a year. It's a wonderful reward.
Tough. I think a world where they could get a Scoot, I think would do them a lot of good if they could find a way to finagle that with Portland. But I am more of the opinion, Brendan, that they should probably just go pretty studs. I would be more interested in trading Siakam than it would be OG, just because I think you should get more value back for Siakam. They were very unrealistic, in my opinion, with what they were looking for with OG last year. I think unreasonably, looking for a ton. OG's fine. He is a good player, but he's not a superstar, and he wants this bigger role. But maybe if you do reshuffle the deck here, and you trade away Siakam to Dallas or whatever, maybe you extend OG. You could still trade him again at some point, but he gets the chance to maybe expand his game a little bit and see if there's actually anything on that bone, which is the bone that he has always kind of reportedly wanted to chew on.
I think Toronto was probably the most bummed out by Mikal Bridges breaking out last year because they're damn it, we don't have the best young wing to trade like we thought we did anymore. Now Mikal's the guy. All right, you covered the Precious stuff. I agree. Do it if you want to. They have the 13th pick. Do we have time to rapid fire through OG trades?
Yeah.
All right. Do you think the Grizzlies still pursue him? Because they were the number one team, but now this jaw thing that Adam Silver is going to, do a Tumblr post about in a little bit is looming.
Tumblr post. He's gonna have that guy that the NBA has that does trick shots and then for the NBA he's a social media influencer. Mm-hmm. He's just gonna make a shot and that's how they're gonna announce it.
And then it's gonna be a backdrop that appears where it's the statement on a piece of paper or something. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, it's gonna be something really fucking stupid. I think OG trades are tricky in the sense that I think he is someone that should. I don't know if he is the piece on top to be like fixture defense. I think he like raises the floor. I don't think he's like a cherry on top of an already good defense, if that makes sense. So if I'm Memphis, I probably do it because I think this is a real need, and I think he could play the 4 next to Triple J when Triple J is at the 5. Mm-hmm. The question is like, how many picks do you want to give up?
Yeah, I mean,
and if I'm Memphis, I'm probably still just saying I'm going in because like even if like I think the jaw extensions or suspension is going to be a little hefty. His extension is going to be hefty as well.
But you
and
still
like
can't
maybe that plays
like
a part
next
in
year's
this.
just a wash. Like you can't just be like, whatever.
Exactly. No, exactly where I'm going. You're going to get him back, and you're going to want to go for it, especially if the talent is as good as you think it is. You're going to be in the hunt in the West anyway.
Yeah, they've played well without him in the past. It's like I think people have gotten a little overboard with the jaw thing. Like it's just going to destroy the future and present of the Memphis Grizzlies, and it's like it's its own thing. It's not going to be easy for them to deal with, but they also still have one of the most promising cores in the NBA.
Bingo.
So yeah,
would you if you're Memphis?
I would definitely do it if I'm Memphis. I think that he is. I would look, to return to the Nuggets. I would look at what Aaron Gordon just did in these playoffs and feel pretty excited about acquiring somebody like OG Anunoby. I think especially if my future is a little more small ball with Jaren at the 5, which he showed himself to be able to do pretty well in this last season. I don't think OG's quite as high IQ of a player as somebody like Aaron Gordon, but I think functional strength is just a really big thing. If you could get OG to become a little bit more of a rebounder, the shooting is there, which is huge. He's just going to be more playable than a lot of other guys like him because he's shot, above league average from deep for 4 years now. I mean, like on a high volume, like he is a legit shooter. So that's what you want. I think the question with OG in general is just how serious is his desire to be more on offense and how much is that going to get in the way if he can't? Is going to a place where he can win and be appreciated and paid more enough, or is it a situation where he has to have the ball in his hands and that's his number one goal? I kind of don't think it's that because very few players allow that to just wreck their careers. We don't really know because he's not that talkative. He's not the type of leaker that, makes that stuff known. So we'll see. But on Memphis, he wouldn't be that. So that would be the one thing holding me back. I didn't do a Memphis package just because I wasn't really sure where things would land. But that's interesting. All right, to the Pelicans is my second one for Larry Nance, Herb Jones, and 2 firsts. I kind of used the template of what the deadline stuff was as the where their offers were going to be, or at least what the Raptors were going to demand. So it's probably not 2 good firsts, but 2 firsts of some kind, Herb Jones and Larry Nance.
I would do it if I'm the Pelicans. I really like Larry Nance as like a role guy. I think they could then Toronto could then flip him for more if they really wanted to. You have to rehabilitate Herb's offense a little bit, but you get a better offensive player, similar defensive player. Yeah, I would do that if I'm Toronto. I'd feel good about him and Ingram as a duo as well, I think.
Yeah, that feels like a lot, but I think
they have a lot to trade though, is the thing.
And I just feel like the Raptors are operating from a point of strength. Hey, do you want the most valuable thing in the league? We have one of them. You know what I mean?
How about the Thunder trade for OG?
They have Jalen Williams. Isn't that OG? Part 2?
That's
I mean, they're kind of the same exact player.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I was going to be like Lou Dort some picks.
Yeah.
You and OG moving to OKC.
So I have Dallas for Bullock, Green, and 2 firsts.
And
then I have
prefer the Toronto one.
For the Pelicans
New
one.
Orleans one.
And then the last one, which is back to the Eastern Conference for this, I'm going to pull back on this one. Never mind. I was going to do a Tyrese Maxey thing, but I think Maxey's just better. So I was going back and forth. I'm like, could the Raptors give up something? I'm just like, I don't think it's realistic. But I liked the idea of giving the Sixers an actual wing defender if they could find a way to get one. But
yeah, it's like a team like Cleveland would call if they could, but they can't because they don't have picks. But it's like you could be like, do you want Jared Allen instead of Jakob Poeltl and some picks? But they don't have the picks. Like the Knicks already have Josh Hart, who's not as good, but they can just resign and not have to give up picks for. Mm-hmm. They're gonna get a team that's I think kind of desperate. I think is where this ends up, and that could be New Orleans, that could be Dallas. I think it's going to be a team that feels like it has to do something aggressive and go get wing help.